Coming up on today's edition of Locked On Eagles, it is time for year 6 of our offseason simulations. We play the role of Howie Roseman going through free agency and the draft for the Birds in 2023.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to a Monday edition of the show. We're your only Eagles podcast Monday through Friday, even through the offseason, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Football GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? If so, then this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. It's our listeners getting 100% free boost to their franchise when they use the promo code LOCKEDON in all caps in the game. You guys know this episode. We've been doing this for 6 years now since I started Locked On Eagles, since I took over, I should say, for Ben Solak and Michael Kist after the 2017 Super Bowl season. I felt like I needed a staple show for the offseason to really kick things off. And so I did an offseason simulation where I pretty much said, this entire podcast, I'm going to play the role of Howie Roseman. I'm going to go through the offseason as if I'm Howie, re-signing players in-house for free agency, making signings outside of the Eagles organization, signing free agents from other teams, going through a 7-round mock draft as well. And basically, like I said, simulating the offseason. And now fast forward 6 years later, we're on round 6 of our offseason simulations. So today's episode, I'm going to play the role of Howie Roseman. On tomorrow's Tuesday's edition of Locked On Eagles, Gino is going to play the role of Howie Roseman. So I'm going to start here in the first segment with all of the in-house and exterior free agent decisions on offense. Segment 2 is going to be about the defense, where there are a lot of decisions that Howie Roseman has to make. And then segment 3, I'll recap my 7-round mock draft that I did earlier today. And there are, again, Howie Roseman said it himself at the end of the year press conference, there are a lot of decisions that they have to make about in-house free agents, about what to do with these 2 first-round draft picks, trying to extend this window, this championship window. They make a Super Bowl in 2022. Can they keep all these players together? If not, who's going to replace them? Who do they keep? Who do they let go of? The veterans, of the young players? There are a lot of decisions to make. So I did the best I could in the role of Howie. Let's start here. Let's kick things off year 6 of the Locked On Eagles offseason simulations with the offensive side of the football. The first move I'm making is signing Jalen Hurts to that mega contract extension. It is inevitable, and it's not ideal that you didn't have the luxury of really maximizing 5 years, 4 to 5 years of a rookie contract that an elite quarterback has, where he takes that step in year 2 or year 3, like Hurts did, Wentz, Lamar Jackson, Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow. So many of these guys emerge so quickly in their rookie deals that now suddenly you have 3 to 4 years, sometimes 5 years. If it's Mahomes, he instantly came in and dominated, where you have your elite quarterback making almost nothing compared to the top paid quarterbacks, and then you get to build around him with a roster that you can invest a lot more money in. I mean, look at the Eagles. They had that opportunity in 2022. Jalen Hurts was making nothing on a 2nd-round rookie contract. But unlike other young quarterbacks, they didn't really have the luxury of getting to build around him like that for years and years and years, because they drafted him in the 2nd round to be a backup. So in 2020, they didn't expect to do that. They had Carson Wentz on his mega contract, and Hurts was supposed to be the backup. 2021, Hurts started, but they weren't going all in yet. They were rebuilding. And so they didn't know if Jalen Hurts was going to be the guy. They were trying to replace him, to be honest. They were thinking that he wasn't plan A. Maybe he was plan B or plan C. 2022, they still didn't know if Hurts was the guy, but then they finally started to invest in the roster aggressively, trading for A.J. Brown, signing Hassan Reddick, Kazir White, James Bradbury, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, trading up for Jordan Davis. You know what I mean? I mean, they definitely went in 2022, but they didn't have that luxury for long. And now The other thing is Hurts being a second-round pick, they don't have that fifth-year option, so this is his last year. 2023 is the last year of his rookie deal, so they have to pay him. It's not ideal, but again, the cap keeps going up every year. He's young. You can backload this contract, and look at it in this way. It's not ideal. You have to pay like 30% of your cap to one player, but how great is it that we have a quarterback again in Philadelphia that you want to pay this mega deal and you're comfortable giving him basically a blank check? That's a good feeling to have. Again, yes, it's easier to build when a quarterback's on a cheaper rookie deal. It's a huge luxury that is based on the NFL's structure of contracts right now. It didn't used to be that way after the Sam Bradford pick. That's when it changed after the new CBA was agreed upon in 2010. Now it's changed. The Eagles, they're going to have to find different ways, but they're still going to have money. And because of that deal, you still have another year of his rookie contract you can take advantage of. And so you're going to have some money up front to sign a lot of these free agents. But they got to get this deal done, I think, before Joe Burrow signs, because the more these other young quarterbacks get deals, the more Jalen Hurts is going to say, now I want more than him. I want more than him. That's kind of the way these contracts work in the NFL is you pretty much, the next guy up gets more than the guy that just got paid. So I think Jalen Hurts is definitely going to get that mega extension and lock him up as the Eagles quarterback of the future. When it comes to other free agents that the Eagles could re-sign on offense, there's only really two key guys, because Jason Kelce, we don't know if he's going to be back in 2023, but that's more about retirement versus coming back. If he comes back, they have him on the contract. The offense, the big two question marks about free agency is Isaac Samalu going to be back, and is Miles Sanders going to be back? Isaac Samalu, I don't think will be back. He was one of the most underrated players in football this year. He had an incredible season coming off a Liz Frank injury, right? A huge injury that almost ended his career, switching positions from left guard to right guard, which is harder than most people think. He becomes a player that I think was as good as anybody on this offensive line, full of elite stars, young and old first ballot Hall of Famers, and young elite players like Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson. Isaac Samalu was just as good as the other four. I think he's going to cash in with another team that has a lot of cap space that needs offensive line help for a young quarterback, maybe a team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, who knows? But I think that that's definitely something the Eagles are not going to be able to afford. And I think they know with Jeff Stoutland, he gets the most out of his linemen. They have 4/5 of this line already elite intact. You could have Cam Jurgens play right guard, or Jack Driscoll, or draft somebody, or have a cheaper option than Samalu. Love the guy. He's been great for the Eagles since being drafted in 2016, but I think he's going to cash in somewhere else. When it comes to Miles Sanders, I keep going back and forth every single day about what to do. Here are the reasons I think you could sign Miles Sanders. Number one, the Eagles want to be an elite running offense, and they want to have the best of the best, I think, in that area. They don't want to settle. Miles Sanders is coming off a career year. And you look at all the free agent running backs, there are so many and so many good prospects in this draft class that he might go out there and test the market, and it's not as lucrative as you'd think. And a lot of NFL teams are becoming more disciplined nowadays and not paying running backs a whole lot of money. So maybe because of the competitive market out there, paying Miles Sanders, yeah, again, teams don't really like to allocate a lot of resources to running back, especially when you have as many free agents as the Eagles do. But when you compare it to other positions, is paying Miles Sanders really going to be that expensive? Not sure. They have to be disciplined, though, because if he does go out there and it is a lot of money, they need to definitely use that money towards Hurts, towards the more important positions on this football team. Because while you don't want to settle at running back because you want this running game to be as dynamic as it's been over the last few years, you also have the best offensive line in football, a top 2 mobile quarterback in the NFL, top 3, at least top tier, I would say, with Jalen Hurts. And you have Kenny Gainwell, who's good, and a rookie could, or a cheaper free agent can probably replace Sanders' production by at least 70 to 75%, even if it's a committee approach. So I'm not sure what to do with Miles Sanders. I would predict that he walks. I think in other years, maybe it's different, but the Eagles feel like a team that they have to pay their quarterback, and they have so many other free agents. They have a lot of draft picks, and they know they have all these assets for their elite run game already, that Miles Sanders isn't a make or break player for this offense, as good as he was in 2022. So I'm going to actually predict that Both Isaac Samalu and Miles Sanders walk. Now we go outside of the organization. Here's who I think they sign. This one's a fun one. Marcus Mariota becomes the new backup quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. We come full circle from 2015 when I and everybody, this feels like a lifetime ago, was pounding the table for Chip Kelly to trade the farm for Marcus Mariota to be the Eagles franchise quarterback. Fast forward 8 years later, I think he'd be a perfect backup to Jalen Hurts. We saw, he is not a good passer by far anymore. You look at what he did with the Atlanta Falcons this year, but the Falcons were competitive a lot early in the year, and Mariota was pretty clutch in the fourth quarter with his legs. I think he would fit right in. And, you look at what happened with Gardner-Minshew this past year when he had to play 2 games. The offense really had to change. I think he's going to go try to compete for playing time elsewhere, maybe like Arizona with Kyler Murray being hurt, try to prove he can be a starter. And I think of Marcus Mariota, a good mobile backup quarterback that can fit right in if Jalen Hurts goes down, and they can still run those RPOs, read options, getting moving outside the pocket. And just how funny would that be to see Mariota in an Eagles jersey? I think, for me as the young fan of me would just love to see that finally come to fruition. I think they signed Marcus Mariota as their backup quarterback. And I think at running back, Miles Sanders leaves. I could see them signing Devin Singletary. The Buffalo Bills already have James Cook and Nyheim Hines in 2023. Singletary would be cheaper than Sanders. He's pretty elusive, definitely does not have the breakaway speed of Sanders. I think he ran a 4.66 back in 2019. He's not super fast, but he's a better pass catcher right now than Sanders. He has good short area explosiveness. He has that cut on a dime ability like Sanders does. And he's been very efficient in a pass heavy offense over the last 2 years, back-to-back years with over 800 yards rushing and over 200 yards receiving, 1,000 yards from scrimmage. I think you get a Devin Singletary, Kenneth Gainwell, and Boston Scott, or a rookie you draft kind of trio. And I think you're going to be okay in the run game next year for sure. So I'll say they sign Devin Singletary, Marcus Mariota, and then at receiver, they at least bring back Zach Pascal to compete with Quez Watkins. But as I said on Friday's show, keep an eye out for 2 players that I think they really liked in 2019 in the second round, Amico Hardman or Paris Campbell. I know money's going to be tight, but if the price is right, I could see Amico Hardman kind of move to have as a 1-2 punch at wide receiver 3 with Quez Watkins if they want to upgrade from Zach Pascal next year. So those are my offensive free agent decisions. Pay Jalen Hurts, Isaac Samalu walks, Miles Sanders walks too. By the way, I think Jason Kelce does come back for another season. You sign Devin Singletary, you sign Marcus Mariota, and you kick the tires on another wide receiver 3 to compete with Quez Watkins, whether that's Zach Pascal, Amico Hardman, Paris Campbell, or even if you want to maybe look into a reunion with Nelson Aguilar, just something to get Quez Watkins more competition for next year. Defense time coming up next right here on my 2023 Philadelphia Eagles offseason simulation. This is where the fun begins. This is where a lot of tough decisions come into play. So we'll get into that coming up next right here on Locked On Eagles. And guys, today's episode of Locked On Eagles is sponsored by Ultimate Football GM. We are so excited about our mobile game that we are sponsoring, that is sponsoring Locked On Eagles, Ultimate Football GM. We've had so much fun hosting a league for our Locked On NFL host, Chris Carter of Locked On Steelers, won it all. Make sure you get in on the fun with friends and family. It's your turn to compete, but more on that later. Ever dreamed of becoming an NFL GM and managing your football franchise? Well, your dream can come true, and this game is definitely for you. You'll manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through seasons, and lead your team to glory, trying to build a dynasty. With Ultimate Football GM, you're responsible for controlling the destiny of your franchise by hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season, all in this challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want to and when you want to. Locked On Eagles listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo code LOCKEDON in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps. So make sure to check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM, start your dynasty today. All right, Eagles fans, we're continuing our 2023 offseason simulation for the Philadelphia Eagles. On offense, segment 1, I re-signed Jalen Hurts to a mega deal. I let Isaac Samalu and Miles Sanders walk. Jason Kelce's coming back. I signed Devin Singletary as a cheaper option in the free agent pool of running backs. There are a lot of them. Even if it wasn't Singletary, it could be David Montgomery, Tony Pollard, Rashad Penny, Kareem Hunt. Could be bringing back Sanders. There are a lot of options. And then I brought in Marcus Mariota as the Eagles' new backup quarterback to Jalen Hurts. I think Gardner Minshew is going to go compete somewhere else. I don't think he's going to be a starter next year, but I think he wants to go somewhere where at least he has a chance to get more playing time. And then also considering signing a Paris Campbell, Amico Hardman type to compete with Quez Watkins if they decide they want to upgrade from Zach Pascal next year. So that's the offensive side of the football. Let's now get into the defense where there are so many free agents that Howie Roseman has to make decisions on. There are so many. Let's just start with the list. On the defensive line, it's Javon Hargrave, Fletcher Cox, Ndamukong Suh, Linval Joseph, Brandon Graham, and Robert Quinn. Yeah, that many free agents on the defensive line. At linebacker, both starters, Kazir White and TJ Edwards. At cornerback, James Bradbury. At safety, both starters, Marcus Epps and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So a defense that led the league in turnovers, was number one in passing defense, number one in sacks, suddenly has a very unknown future with who they're going to be in just one calendar year. If I was Howie Roseman, here is what I would do. And here's what I kind of combine what I would do and what I think is going to happen. So who is re-signed on defense? Two guys got to be prioritized. Javon Hargrave and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I think you got to sign both to extensions. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson proved that he could be, and the Saints didn't believe he could be this, a traditional safety that plays deep, cover two, cover one, but can come down into the box, play against the run, and be a great tackler. He was the Eagles' best tackler in the playoffs, led the NFL in interceptions, played in the slot when Avonte Maddox went down and Josiah Scott was struggling. CGJ really was the Malcolm Jenkins Swiss Army knife that you've been missing since Jenkins left back in 2019. He's coming off his rookie contract. He's only going to be, 25 next year? He's smack dab in the middle of his prime. You got to pay CGJ. And it sounds like reports are the Eagles are going to do everything they can to make sure he stays in midnight green next year. Javon Hargrave, I know he might be making $20 million a year next year, and maybe you go the route of Fletcher Cox as the cheaper option with the emergence of Milton Williams and Jordan Davis, but I can't imagine a team like the Eagles that prioritize the trenches so much would let an elite pass rushing defensive tackle walk in his prime when he's coming off the two best years of his career. This past year has 11 sacks. I don't know how you let Javon Hargrave get out that door. Cox had 7 sacks, and again, he would be cheaper, but Hargrave was a game wrecker, and he's a top-tier pass-rushing defensive tackle. So I think you got to pay Hargrave, and you got to pay Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. And then who else stays? I think you got to sign Brandon Graham, TJ Edwards, Marcus Epps, and then I want to keep at least one veteran defensive tackle for some depth, because if you imagine, let's say I re-signed Ndamukong Suh. Let's say Linval Joseph's gone, Fletcher Cox is gone. Suddenly, you have Milton Williams moved up to a starter with Hargrave and Davis. But after that, you have Tui Peloto coming back, and then who? I think you got to bring in at least one more guy to rotate back through. They like to be 4 or 5 deep at each defensive line spot for rotation. So I thought Ndamukong Suh, maybe it could be Linval Joseph, but I feel like Jordan Davis needs to take command of that nose tackle spot. I think Tui Peloto can be a good replacement in a rotation. I'd rather bring back more of a pass rushing defensive tackle like Ndamukong Suh. So the guys that leave, Linval Joseph, I think Fletcher Cox goes elsewhere, as sad as that is. Robert Quinn was a non-factor this year. They're going to want to add that 4th pass rusher, edge rusher, with Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, and Josh Sweat through the draft, I would say, most likely, or a younger, better option in free agency. And then I think Kazir White goes. I think they want to pay TJ Edwards, and they want Nakobe Dean to replace Kazir White. And then James Bradbury, an all-pro in 2022, was incredible. One of the best Eagles corners we've had in over a decade, but I think he's going to cash in this year with a cornerback needy team that has a lot of cap space. So I think you sign Hargrave, Gardner-Johnson, Graham, Edwards, Epps, and Suh. Cox walks, so does Joseph, Quinn, White, and Bradbury. One suggestion I have for the Eagles to consider if James Bradberry leaves, Marcus Peters is coming off a season where, he's 30 now. He's coming off a pretty major injury where he wasn't fully healthy until the second half of the season, didn't have the interceptions he's normally used to. I could see Marcus Peters betting on himself and wanting to sign a James Bradberry-like prove-it one-year contract and then cash in 2024. Marcus Peters, I could see becoming that new CB2 for the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe it's Patrick Peterson. I could see the Eagles trying something like that again and replicate that James Bradberry magic. Look, I want them really badly to use that 10th pick or the 30th pick on a corner in the draft. They need to do that no matter what and finally invest in this position with long-term talent that's young. But I could see them in free agency before the draft trying a Marcus Peters type of move. That would be my one suggestion, kind of like on offense, suggesting Amico Hardman or Paris Campbell at wide receiver 3. I'm not going to predict they sign Marcus Peters, but I could see that as a move that they would definitely consider opposite Darius Slay. All right, guys, to wrap up my 2023 offseason simulation, it's time for my 7-round mock draft. I'm going to recap what I did with 2 first-round picks, a second, and a bunch of picks on day 2 and day 3. Coming up next, right here on Locked On Eagles. All right, Eagles fans, we're wrapping up this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles, kicking off year 6 of our offseason simulation podcast. So segment 1, I went through all the decisions Howie Roseman needs to make on offense. Segment 2, we did the defensive side of the ball. As you probably were feeling in those 2 segments, overwhelmed and your head was probably spinning because Howie has a lot of decisions to make. And part of those decisions is going to be how much he likes his draft class, how much he thinks he can get long-term and short-term contributions from picks that you have with 2 first-round selections this year, 10th and 30th. You also have a pick in the 60s in the second round. You got some other picks day 2 and day 3. So adding young talent is what's going to help extend this window. Unlike after the 2017 Super Bowl, that's going to be more of the key. Obviously, keeping a lot of these guys in-house that you have to sign in free agency is going to be very important for the short term, but making sure you keep nailing these draft classes like you have the last few years, that extends the window even more, especially with Jalen Hurts getting that mega deal. You're going to want studs like a Devontae Smith and a Landon Dickerson who are bona fide stars in the NFL, all pro caliber players that are on cheap rookie deals. So this is what I did with my mock draft with pick 10, 30, 62, 94 in round 3, 221 in round 7, and 250 in round 7. Not as many picks as in the past few years for Howie Roseman, but still quite enough to make sure that you stockpile this roster with more young talent. So let me share my screen here for our YouTube listeners, and then I'm going to share the mock draft through audio as well. So here's what I did. Here's what I did with my mock draft if I was Howie Roseman. With the 10th overall pick, I had the Eagles, yes, maybe they bring in Marcus Peters. Maybe they do bring back James Bradberry. Who knows what they do at corner in free agency? But I have them taking Devin Witherspoon, the Illinois corner, with the 10th overall pick. They finally need to, I know they're going to go trenches heavy. They always do in the first 2 rounds. But 1 year, it's okay to take another position. That's not a receiver or a lineman, Howie. It's going to be okay, I promise. They need a long-term player, not just because they're going to lose James Bradberry most likely, but also because Darius Slay is at the end of his prime. Yes, he's been incredible these past 2 years. And I think he'll be a prime candidate to have his contract restructured. And he's not only got a year or 2 left. I still think he's got a couple years of really solid play still at corner. But after 2-3 more years, you don't have anything guaranteed at this position. And you need cornerback depth for sure in the NFL. So I think Devin Witherspoon is the pick at number 10. But you also look at Isaac Samalu. I had predicting he's going to leave in free agency this year. You look at Jason Kelce's only got 1 more year. They're going to need interior offensive line help. I have Osiris Torrance, the Florida guard, coming to the Eagles with that 30th overall pick. I loved Torrance at the Senior Bowl this year in Alabama. I thought he was the best offensive lineman. I think he would be a perfect fit. He's a mauler at right guard. Put him in between Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson, and then next year have it be kind of your new Mariota and Dickerson. Then you got a young center right guard tandem with Cam Jurgens and Osiris Torrance. Look, I hope they take a corner with one of those picks. I have Witherspoon going, but I can guarantee you with the unknowns of the offensive line right now and the defensive line, they're going to take a lineman with one of those picks. And even with this year having Jason Kelce back, even if Samalu were to come back, Andre Dillard's going to be gone this year. You have Jack Driscoll, but outside of that, this team needs backup offensive linemen too. They want to be deep and they want to be top heavy with star power. So I think they're going to take O'Cyrus Torrence from the Florida Gators. So a cornerback and a guard in the first round. With that second pick, I think Isaiah Foskey of Notre Dame, who's got a lot of traits that I like: length, bend, explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. Little raw when it comes to how many pass rushing moves he has, but I think that's why you let him develop behind Hassan Reddick, Josh Sweat, and Brandon Graham. Foskey, another guy that I liked at the Senior Bowl. I think Foskey would be a perfect replacement for Robert Quinn, who was definitely a disappointment in 2022. So 2 of my 3 picks, linemen. That's what the Eagles do. This year, it's justifiable more than ever. And then I go right back to the offensive line with my 3rd round pick at number 94, Cody Mauch of North Dakota State. I think the Eagles would love Cody Mauch. Not because he went to North Dakota State, but because this guy can play tackle. He can play guard. Even in Mobile, he played at center. And I know I took 3 players in a row that went to the Senior Bowl, but I think that was more of a coincidence. I really liked Cody Mauch. I love that versatility. I think the Eagles like that too. It's why they liked guys like a Jack Driscoll in the NFL draft, a Halapoulivaati Vaitai a few years ago. They like players. Isaac Seumalo even was a center that played guard. Landon Dickerson did too. They want versatility. It's one thing I hated about Andre Dillard was that he didn't have that ability. Cody Mauch would be a great backup alongside Jack Driscoll to play any spot you needed him. The final 2 picks in round 7 at 221 and 250, Darius Davis from TCU, a wide receiver that I think could push Quez Watkins and Britton Covey too. This team just needs some more competition at the bottom of the depth chart at wide receiver. And then I rounded out with another defensive tackle to add depth. If you're going to lose Linval Joseph, if you're going to lose Fletcher Cox, maybe even Ndamukong Suh, you got to replace that talent. I took Taron Vincent of Ohio State. So there's my mock draft. Devin Witherspoon, the corner of Illinois. O'Cyrus Torrence, the Florida guard. Isaiah Foskey, the Notre Dame edge rusher. Cody Mauch, the North Dakota State tweener. A do-it-all offensive lineman. Darius Davis, the TCU wide receiver. And Taron Vincent, the defensive tackle for Ohio State. I'm going to post this entire simulation up on our Twitter page at Locked On Birds at the end of the week. Gino's going to do his offseason simulation tomorrow. Let us know what you think. Who had the better simulation? Again, on Twitter at Locked On Birds. Let us know what you would do as well. I'm on Twitter at DiBiase LOE, and Gino is at GC24_football. Thanks for tuning into today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Year 6 of my offseason simulations are complete. I really should go back and look at how well or how bad I did. Maybe that'll be a nice project to do over the next few weeks, my past offseason simulations. But we've got 4 more shows for you this week. Subscribe to Locked On Eagles on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. And as always, thank you for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Thank you for downloading. Thank you for watching and listening. And let's go Birds. Have a great day, everybody.